So welcome to today's masterclass on clinic profit boosters, the do's and don'ts of practice profitability. In all transparency, this was one of our most registered masterclasses of the year so far. Surprise, surprise, that we're talking about money and profitability and how to squeeze every last dime we can so we can not only stay afloat, but also stay thriving in our practices. Because, I've said this many times to a lot of our clients, the work we do is just too damn important. We are the healers, we are the helpers. Without us, what would happen to the people we serve? They would get most likely less than care, if care at all. And all of us are here because we all had a vision, we all have a purpose, and we're all fulfilled by helping others. And it's so important that not only do we learn the best ways to help others, but we also learn to help ourselves and help our practice. And that's really where we're going to dive in today in talking about, well, how do we do that from a financial perspective? How do we get a higher level financial acumen to understand things in a simple and practical yet in powerful way? And for some of you, you're looking at possibly either selling your business in the next, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And others are, I'm just kind of curious and what my business might be worth. Because the last thing you want to do is work your butt off for 20, 30 years and then kind of like, all right, I'm selling. And then you sell for peanuts and you're like, this is ridiculous. So to have an understanding of how to look at your business from a place where someone else would be buying it. So we're going to talk about that today. And I am very excited and honored to be here with one of my good friends. He's an amazing guy. He's one of our highest level executive coaches at Practice Freedom U, Steve Allred. Steve, welcome, man.
Thanks, Jamie. It's exciting. This is a great topic, and a lot of conversations aren't having around this, so I'm excited to be here. And
Absolutely. And you make up a great point, Steve. There's just not enough conversations around this.
no,
Partly because, I mean, let's face it, sometimes we feel alone, right? Any hands who say, is this a lonely business a little bit, being a practice owner? It is a lonely business. And when you talk to other people, we have egos. We have like, how are you doing? I'm doing good. How are you? We going, everyone's doing good. Yet all the statistics say that, 80, 85% are not doing that great. So it's hard to be vulnerable and talk about this stuff and be in a safe space and trust the advice that you're going to be getting. And, that's why I think it's so important to have these discussions. And, I'm going to tell you, this is a safe space. There's nobody here judging. We are all just trying to figure this out, me included. Just some of us have gone through a lot of crap to understand it. And my purpose is to help you understand it in a way where you don't have to go through some of the junk that I did and lose the multiple six figures that I've done and the investments that I've made. So it is so important that we do this today. So, Steve, just a little bit about Steve. So Steve has been a coach at PFU for 2, 3 years, and it didn't take long for me to realize with Steve that this guy has just a financial mind. Any question that I have around financials, I always ask Steve. He just has a way of understanding it. So he's going to be sharing a lot of these things today. We're going to talk about some different strategies, improving best billing practices, discovering techniques to manage and reduce operational costs, gaining a deeper understanding of the key financial principles and framework, and then how to fully utilize your staff and everything that you have at your beck and call. And then about halfway through, I'm going to share something with you that Steve and I came up with that I think you're really going to enjoy. So make sure you stay on point for that. Stay with us for that. Other than that, so Steve, let me just dive right into this. What is it that you are seeing right now out of all the different noise out there, all the different things in the different chat boxes and all that stuff? What do you see as like the biggest challenge? And let me kind of put a framework on it or a frame around it. People that are in the 500 to, let's say, $1.5 million in gross revenue. What is their biggest problem when it comes to financials and profitability and stuff like that?
Great question, Jamey. The biggest issue that I see as I'm working with people, let's face it, at the end of the day, you're looking for money in your pocket. I'm doing all this hard work. How do I get money in my pocket? And how do I sleep at night? And one of the things that I'm noticing is a conversation that's not happening. We talk about profitability. It's all about profit. How do I improve my profitability? And historically, it's the solution's been, hey, I need more patients, I need more visits. How can I get that? That's changed. It's no longer just how do I get more visits, but how do I manage my business so that I improve profitability? But I want to introduce to you guys a simple formula where historically profit has been the end of the conversation. I want to bring it to the beginning. And that is, if you take profit and you subtract out your owner's compensation, which is typically how much you want to pay yourself for lifestyle or just to meet your own personal bills. So owner's compensation minus your debt payment or any debts that you have, minus savings. Now, savings can be something where you're trying to save up some extra money in the bank so that if you have a glitch in your cash flow, maybe you think change health, you can ride out that storm. Or maybe you're saving up to get some new carpet, do some paint, anything that you're saving up for. And then
Hey, Steve, repeat that again.
Okay.
I'm going to put it in the chat box.
All right. So profits minus owner's comp,
All right.
minus
Profit
debt payment.
Minus owners. Hold on. Owner's comp. Okay.
Minus debt payment.
Minus debt payment. And are you talking about the interest payment or the full payment?
Full payment.
Okay.
Okay. Minus your savings, what you're saving up for, and minus any money you're setting aside for like future equipment.
Okay. Kind of equipment fund.
That equals cash flow. I'm going to just state my bias. My bias is your business should be a tool to build wealth. You work way too hard to not do that. I know owners that not only do they pay their staff more, but as their staff puts money in a 401k, they're building wealth faster than the owners are. I think that's a travesty, and I think it's just wrong. I mean, that's just my bias. And so one of the things that's not happening is this discussion right here is how do we get cash flow? Because oftentimes we think, okay, I'm making a good salary, life is good, but there's no cash flow at the end of the day. There's nothing left over. It's that cash flow that you take to invest in your future. That's what builds wealth, and that's what actually changes your life.
So, Steve, we all want to make money, whether we overtly say it or not. But if you're on this call, you certainly want to make more than what you're making. And we all realize that insurance companies, if we're not out of pocket cash-based services, insurance companies, I've never seen an insurance company go belly up. So they're making plenty of money. They're limiting us. Therapists want more and more. So if you're getting paid less and therapists want more, what are people supposed to do? What advice are you giving to the people you're talking to and you're working with? Again, brand new people, that's fine. They're not having that difficulty of a time. It's just them. Their overhead is low.
Right.
You start hiring other therapists. You got 4 or 5 therapists or more, and you're in that, 600,000-700,000 to like, million, million and a half, even up to 2 million. What are you supposed to do? What can people do that maybe they haven't thought about?
So the way to think about this is, where do your expenses go? What buckets are they going into, and how are you managing them? So your profit is like a vital sign of your business. How well do you produce revenue, and how well do you manage expenses? A business at 500 to maybe 800,000, I'm looking for them to be making 15 to 18% profit. Anything hitting $1 million, $1.5 million and higher, I'm looking for 18 to 20%. So some of the things that we talk about is making sure that the buckets are appropriate relative to the revenue. So let's take clinical labor. Oftentimes we hear thrown around that there should be a 3-to-1 ratio. For every, let's say you pay somebody $80,000 a year, they should be generating $240,000 in revenue. Really, what that comes down to is your clinical labor is about 33% of revenue. If you have that ratio at 33%, if you have your admin labor at about 20 to 25%, and then you have your operating expenses between 20 and 25%, you're now right into that 15 to 20% profit margin. And so by breaking it into the buckets, that's the first thing I do. So first place I look and say, where is, if I'm not seeing that profit margin where I want it to be, I go to those ratios, because that tells me where I need to dig deeper. And probably 9 times out of 10, that profit ratio, or the clinical labor to revenue, is out of whack. And so there was a question of repeating the ratio buckets. So I look
I'm writing them down right now. So it's 33, 22. What's the overhead?
So 33, 22, that gives you about 55% for total labor cost.
Is the overhead 25?
And then you throw in overhead about 25%, and that brings you to 20% profit.
Right.
Now, sometimes that's going to be plus or minus, depending on the size of your business. Obviously, the larger your business, the more you can leverage your operating expenses to generate more revenue. So, but most businesses have an issue with their clinical labor to revenue ratio. They're just not generating enough revenue. It's not that you're
especially smaller businesses.
small and large businesses, because what's happening is they're not tying compensation to revenue production.
Right.
A lot of times an owner they want to pay their therapists more. They empathize with them. And so they may have a salary, and then they come up with a bonus structure. But the problem is that bonus structure and that salary are driving up that ratio. And so it makes it harder to make a profit.
So we're making decisions, Steve, based on emotion, based on feeling. Like, I really want to pay them more, I feel, but we don't have hard facts, numbers in place. We don't have a financial dashboard to look at. We're not looking at, these percentages. I mean, one of the first things that we do, if not the first thing, when someone comes into PFU, it's like, I hear what you're saying. I understand your problems. I understand your challenges. I understand what you want, but we need to get really clear and objective, because too many times I've seen people thinking they're doing well. And then when we do a profitability analysis, a practice analysis, their numbers might be 65 to 70%. Working harder and hiring more people is never going to get you further along profitable. I had a client once that he was 73% labor costs. You tell me how he's supposed to make any money. 73% labor costs. And he was in California.
If your labor cost is above 60%, and when I mean labor, that's your clinical labor, that's your techs, that's your admin staff. If you're above 60%, I don't care how hard you work, I don't care how big you are, I don't care what you're doing, you are going to struggle to make a profit. And if you're struggling to make a profit, your life is going to be stressful, because remember,
your clinic's not going to be worth much. We're going to get into EBITDA in a second.
We'll get into that. One of the things that we wanted to talk about is, how do you smooth out your cash flow? And really what that is cash management. Because one of the things that I see is stressful for people, for owners, is that darn third payroll in a month. It comes around every year about the same time, and every year I see people running negative profit, and owners get upset about that. The reality is, cash management is, if we have enough profit, then we can set aside money for that third payroll, so we're not stressed out. And the reality is, then you also have to look at it on a quarterly basis to say, okay, I know January was down a little bit, but February's up and March is even better. So overall in the first quarter, we're doing okay. So it's a little perspective. But managing that clinical labor to revenue ratio is vital. Compensation strategies tie them to revenue production. Therapists are like attorneys. They're like doctors. They're like any professional that you pay a service for. CPAs, they're all producers. And we're probably the only industry that doesn't systematically and uniformly tie compensation to production. And that's where, as a business owner, we get into trouble. Now, if you want to pay somebody and pay them more, and they have good outcomes and they produce more, go for it. That's a great opportunity because it's a win for them and it's a win for the business.
Hey, Steve,
So that's that.
Go ahead, finish
Yeah.
your thought.
So really that principle there, tying compensation to revenue production all the way through bonus and making sure that you're staying within an acceptable ratio is the first key to profitability.
Okay. So I was just talking about this with a client. He was hiring he was giving wanted to give a raise and an advancement to one of his therapists. And I've been working with him for a couple of years. And I said, let's use the 1/3, 2/3 model. And the 1/3 model is based on what you see there, that your clinical labor should be 1/3. In other words, if you want to pay your person, let's say $100,000, your therapist, that therapist should produce, I mean, money in the bank, not just charges, produce 300,000 to be safe. Now, can it be less? Sure, it can be less. But if it's 2.0, you pay them 100, they produce 200,000, there's no way you can get it back. There's just no other place unless you literally have no overhead, which
Right.
kind of difficult to do. So he wanted to give more because he felt bad and he felt like he deserved it. And I said, I get all that, but you need to put your financial hat on and get clear on, if you do give them more, let's be clear on where this person has to be producing. Now, fortunately, this person was already producing, so the numbers made sense. But there are times I've seen, Steve, that they're giving more money and more money and more money. And I'm like, you're literally paying out of your own pocket. You're literally just paying, here, take my family's college education to keep your business afloat. Like, you're losing money, you're better off not hiring anybody.
I've seen people literally subsidize it from their personal budget to keep the business afloat.
Mhm.
And that's just not a healthy way and to run your business. The second area, Jamey, is in your clinical labor, or not your clinical, your operating labor, your admin labor, your non-clinical labor cost. So managing that effectively. And if you look at that today, and if yours is pushing 30%, 35%, then, as owners and therapists, we have a difficulty thinking, okay, I've got to do layoffs. That's never a fun thing to do. I've been a part of it. I've had to do it. I've been on the receiving end of it. Either way, it's not fun. One of the ways that you can flip that script is, are you efficient in all of your processes? Go through your processes. Are you super efficient and streamlined? Because as you grow, and if you're efficient, you can grow revenue without adding headcount and cost. If you can do that, all of a sudden that 30% starts to drop to 28, to 26, to 25, to 22%, and it gets you back into a healthy range. So you can grow your way out of a profitability issue if you can hold your expenses steady and not add to it. The second thing.
Steve, let me
ahead,
jump in
Jamey.
there on that one thing. Steve and I know this. We do this back and forth, so he's used to getting interrupted by me. Steve, I'm going to say something here that is just like, for some people, they may not believe this, but it's 100% true, and I'm going to prove it here right now. Anytime you make your business more efficient, more streamlined, your income will go up. Anytime you make it, which is why it's so important to create systems and to have processes in place. Because when you do, your business is more profitable. And I'm going to prove it here. Who feels that they have really solid processes and systems? Not that they can't be a little bit better, but they're pretty solid. Okay. So Julie, I'm not going to ask your profit at say, but what's your profit margin of your business?
I'm at 20%.
About 20%. Noreen?
Over 20%.
Over 20%. And I know these people specifically because I also know that their business is multiple seven figures. Because the more they put efficiencies in place, the better and more their business grows and the more profitable it becomes. So if you feel like you have processes in place, but your business is not profitable, they're not the right processes you have, or they're not dialed in enough. So that's a very quick little thing. Like if I'm talking to someone and they're like, yeah, my business, my profitability is not really that great. I go, share with me your processes or your SOP, standard operating procedures. And typically they're not strong at all. So again, another practical thing, you want to increase profitability. In addition to what Steve's saying, look at your processes and see how do you make things more efficient, including your admin and your clinical staff. Sorry,
So
Steve.
Jamey, you brought up the question about selling your business. So I used to, in a previous life, I worked for a company that was aggregating clinics. They had 1,200 when I left, $2 billion company. They look at EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. How much money does your clinic produce out of its operations? That's the key measure. They take that, and then depending on what your revenue size is and what that EBITDA or that profit is, and the number of clinics, how efficient and well run your clinic is, they assign a multiple, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, and that's what your business is worth. We may think it's worth more. We may think we have a good reputation. That's nice, but they'll go back to EBITDA every time. And there are ranges that they look at for the size of your business. And so a business that has, say, an EBITDA of 800,000 and 2, 3, 4 clinics, they're probably going to get 6 to 8 times multiple. If your business has great systems and you can go take a European vacation for a month and the whole thing keeps running and you don't lose any sleep, then you might get a little bit more of a premium. The other thing is they may not require you to continue to work in that business for as long. The more your business depends on you for survival, the harder it is to sell the business. And so systems, think of it this way, systems run the business, people run systems. That's how you create freedom. That's how you create profits. And eventually that's how you create wealth. So one of the issues, and I saw some of the questions about average reimbursement. I'm going to talk about a client of mine. He is in the New York area. If anybody on this call from New York, if you are, I'm okay, Dre, you're there, you're up north a little bit. This client is in the city. It's brutal. Let me just tell you that. It's brutal in New York. You have New York prices. You have $60 a visit. So in this last year, this client has seen his labor cost go up 10% in the first 6 months of the year. He was having to pay $90,000 for a new therapist. He thought, oh my gosh, this is hard. A few months later, he's like having to pay $95,000. And now it's pushing $100,000 just to get a new grad started because of the dynamics of what's going on. So one of the things that's keeping him alive is he's very efficient and he has figured out how to leverage virtual assistants. So his admin labor cost is significantly lower than anything else and anywhere else. And so he knows that he has profit margin that he can give up so he can stay in the game and be competitive. His competitors, small practice owners who aren't, eventually they're going to get to the point where they can't make money and they're going to go out of business. It's just that simple. And the market forces are driving the wages that way. My this is my opinion of talking to owners over the last several years and having hundreds of conversations. And that is this. There's two superpowers every owner has to develop. First one is, can I generate profits? Can I be more efficient on my operating labor side? And can I leverage virtual assistants? Okay, getting comfortable around that, wrapping your head around that, figuring out how it fits into your business, whether it's some or all of your front desk. The other is being able to recruit. Those two things, that's going to make or break and be successful. So really managing that admin labor cost is the next place that you can find opportunities for profitability. Because the reality is this, we lost what, 20 some odd thousand therapists during COVID, and we're only producing 12,000 a year. And the enrollment in PT schools is going down because of some of the cost issues there. So we're going to see fewer, there's going to be a tighter and tighter market. Labor costs are going to go up. So you got to find opportunities elsewhere because you can't control the therapist labor cost. So you have
And it's not
to
just
be
PT, it's across
it's
all of the allied health.
allied health. A friend of mine is a CFO for a PE-backed company. He's seen the same thing in behavioral health, the exact same trends. So it's not unique to us. It's just where we are in our economy. So being efficient there.
Hey, Steve, I want to take a break right here real quick, and I want to open it up to questions. I know people are putting, sometimes it's easier to speak it than it is to type it in there. Does anybody have any questions right now for Steve regarding some of the things we're talking about? Does it make sense? Is it giving you any ideas of things that you can do to improve your financial situation, your profitability? Okay.
So in looking at a lot of P&Ls, guys, there are some sneaky things that eat up expenses. Things like credit card fees, interest fees, recurring subscriptions that you've forgotten about. You know, there's a principle of aggregation of small gains. And the British cycling team used this about, 10 years ago. For about 100 years, British cycling had never won the major tour in the major race in professional cycling. They had only won one gold medal. So what they did is they hired a new director of cycling, and he looked at everything. And he said, if I can make a 1% gain across all the different facets, we can get better. And he called that the aggregation of, micro gains, something like that. And the reality is, after doing that for about 3 or 4 years, looking at training, nutrition, the type of seats that they sat on, the type of uniforms that they wore, how they trained, everything. In 2008 to about 2015, British cycling won more gold medals in the Olympics than anybody else. In a span of 6 years, they won 5 Tours of France, which is the most grueling professional race. They were the elite team, and it was all about little 1% here and 1% there. So looking at your P&L and saying, is there a way I can save a percentage here and a percentage there? That makes a difference. So look at those fees, look at those expenses that you don't need. Do you have controls around your office's expenses? If we're leveraging technology, why do we have so much paper? I had in a previous business prior to COVID, it kills me. In 2019, we signed a 5-year lease on one of those mega copiers, the ones that like take up a whole room. COVID hit. It sat for 3 years and did nothing. I literally had to then pay another $20,000 to get out of the lease because we realized we don't need a copier. We didn't need paper. We didn't need pens. We didn't need all the office supplies. And so we saved thousands and thousands of dollars every year just by leveraging technology that we already had and were already using. So those little micro gains are another place that are eating up your profitability. Let's go into billing practices. Now, I'm not a biller, so I'm not going to tell you exactly how to bill. But one of the things that I see is that owners don't have a good management system. Jamey talked about operating systems, how you do intake, how you schedule, how you do your plan of care. All of those are operating systems. One of the things that I look at is, what is your management system? How do you oversee all of those operating systems? As an owner, do you have a regular cadence with your biller, whether it's outsourced or in-house, where you're sitting down and saying, where are our collections? Are you looking at 60-day plus AR and asking yourself, why is that growing? Because that's revenue that you're not recognizing, but you've already paid for. So getting in a cadence where you're looking at that and then getting specific and identifying the problems and issues around that. One of the areas that I see is what's called the metric, your net collection rate. If you look at your charges minus your write-offs, your contractual write-offs, because you've accepted insurance, and then saying, how much am I collecting of that? What percentage? If you're not at 95%, that's an issue. If you're below 90%, you really need to think about who your biller is and what your processes are and what your oversight is. Because what happens is you go collect that extra 5%, that's profit. You've already paid for all your expense. So that's profit. It goes straight to the bottom line and improves what you're doing, and you've already done the work. So really understanding that net collection rate and what your net rate per visit is are two critical billing metrics that I have people look at.
Hey, Steve, real quick, how many people here, and you can type it in if you're not on visual, how many people here know what percentage their billing people or billing company is collecting on their behalf? As Steve talked about, that net rate, 0.6% net rate, that's really good, right? 0.6 as in you're collecting 94% or 94%, 99%?
99.4%.
Is it
We're
94%?
collecting 99%.
99%, 99.4%. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good. That's really good.
And I know Noreen, and I know that that's because there's systems in place, and she's got a great management system of working with her team to oversee it.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me that I love Noreen and she's an amazing person, but there's nothing special about Noreen. What's special about Noreen, she's doing the things that actually help you create a better, more efficient business.
Right.
When you have that, you attract better people because you're more secure and they know what to expect, and things happen, consistently, and you're more profitable. And all of us have to be like that in today's world because there's not tons of money coming in and we can afford to be lazy, or we can afford to be, cavalier with how we're running things. This is the choice we made by being a business owner, and we have to respect the fact that we own this business. We're the curators of this business, and we have to lean into understanding this stuff. Although it's more fun and comfortable to be immersed in patient care, if you're not doing the stuff we're talking about today, guess what? No one is. No one is doing this. We have to be the ones that are doing this. So the fact that Noreen knew right away what that was, I don't have to ask her if she's profitable. I know damn well she is. Because if she's on top of this, she's on top of other things. And
Right.
each one of us can be that. Each one of us can do that. So if you don't know what that number is, I would strongly suggest that you find out and keep track on a monthly basis, working with your biller, working with your billing company, what that number is. It's your money. And if it's not in your account, it is costing you money. There's something called the speed of money. The faster you collect it, the more money you make.
Hey, Jamey, I want to share my screen because I want to show a tool that I've been using that we've developed here. And it really just helps give some insight. We look at this whole question of profitability. Because again, it's that profitability is where we start. And so we want to have enough profitability so that after we take out our owner compensation, pay our debts, save for the future, invest in new equipment, we still have some money left over so that we can invest and build wealth. So this is an analytical tool that we've developed and a dashboard that I'll show you real quick. We input data. So just some basic information out of your P&L, some basic operational metrics around new patients and visits. And we look at this. And so this is looking at the first quarter of a clinic. You'll notice here that they're at about 8.5% profit. When you look at the reason why, you'll notice that their labor costs. Now, this particular clinic does not break out their clinical labor from their labor costs, so it makes it a little bit harder to dig in. If you don't break out your clinical labor, I would highly recommend talk to your bookkeeper, talk to your accountant, figure out how you can start doing that, because it will give you insights. The other thing that I see where people don't have insights is if they have multiple clinics, their bookkeeping is all into one account. They're not breaking it out, so they can't see what it looks like by clinic. So this group here, their labor cost is almost 61% of revenue. That means that there's not a whole lot left over for them to have profit. Their operational expenses are about 31%. Again, a little bit high. And so just because starting here at your labor cost, you're going to have a decreased profitability. If we just put this back into those norms of 55 and 25, even if we got their labor costs down in line at 55%, we're now at almost 14%, almost double their profitability just by looking at their labor. So being able to break it down into these buckets, I sat with them and looked at it and said, what do we need to do? Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to flip this over to our monthly analysis. Looking at March, their profit was 4%. When you look at February, it was 7%. January, a little bit better. So one of the things then we look at is say, okay, why is that? And when you look at their visits, and we're going to flip over to our dashboard here. When you look at their visits, their new patients were going up. Their visits over time were relatively stable. What we discovered, they were having a collection issue. They weren't collecting the money. They were doing the work. You know, in this owner's mind, it was, my business is doing poorly. They were stressed out. The reality was the business was doing just fine. Your visits per new patient were fine. Your referrals were good. Your conversion rate was good. They just weren't collecting. Now, there were some operational reasons why. There were some personnel reasons why I won't go into that led to this. But one of the things that we discovered, I said, how's your management system over billing? And he says, you know, I've been so busy, I just haven't been meeting with my biller. So that management system broke down, collections got delayed, profits went down, stress levels went up, and now you start making decisions really based on information that's not totally correct or totally accurate as far as what's going on with the business. So having those systems in place, but then being able to look at your data and understand where are my issues, I can start to dig in. No different than if you're treating a patient. You do an evaluation, you see where there's problems, you dig deeper. So we use this analytical tool to help us understand, are things going the way that they should? We set benchmarks so that we can look at this and say, okay, if my revenue in January is 84,000 and my benchmark, my non-clinical labor should be 46, but it's actually 42. Okay, I'm good there. But my operational should be around 21%, but it's actually 28%. That's not good. I got to dig into that and understand why. It's always asking the question why, and then understanding what behaviors and what decisions are occurring that lead to what you're seeing from a number standpoint. And so by breaking it out with these ratios, we were better able to see where they should be and come up with a plan of action. And really by him having better collections, all of these ratios started to get in line because the revenue was now being recognized, whereas before it wasn't. So sometimes it can be revenue, sometimes it could be operation. When we looked at this, we said, wait a minute, why was it you were having issues when your new patients were going up, when your visits were holding pretty stable? When your visits for new stays, yes, there's some changes, but 13 to 11 wasn't huge. And that's what made us start to think about, is it something else? And that's where we looked into the cash collections. And so that's where understanding how these numbers work allow us to get more in tune with what's driving profits. And the nice thing about for this business is we just stay on top of it. And all of a sudden, May's looking better. If we look at May here, May is back up to profit as a percentage of revenue, 24%. Now, the flip side of this, this individual in our coaching session called me up and said, hey, I've had an amazing May. Look at this. And I kind of had to tone it down a little bit and say, well, you're having an amazing May is because your collection sucked in the beginning of the quarter, and now you're collecting all your money. But let's look at that 5-month run and look at it, and it's starting to improve. And I expect to see June, July, and August as that rest of that money comes in. If we look at year to date, we'll see that his business is doing just fine. So, Jamey, let me stop there for just a second. Questions? Is this helpful as a way to look at profitability, keeping in mind what we talked about in the very beginning? It's the end of the story is not profitability. That's the beginning. It's that profitability minus your owner's comp, your debt, your savings, so that you get cash flow that you can use to build wealth. Questions?
Go ahead and
thoughts
unshare your screen,
this?
Steve, so I can see.
Yeah.
If people are raising their hands, and a lot of people are off video. I mean, what did you think about that? Do you see how when you have a visual representation of your business versus an emotional representation, it allows you to see things, and then your brain starts working almost like it's a scientific problem. Like you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. It's 60 something percent. It really needs to be lower than that. Let's see what we can do. And immediately channels your focus and your energy to solving a problem that's going to move the needle in the right direction. Without that, we keep everything in our heads and everything in this emotional space because we're emotional beings. But making decisions in emotional places, and you said it before, the guy turned around and said, oh my God, I'm having a great May. How many of us have said that? Oh, I'm having a great May or a great week. The true business owners are saying, well, of course we're having a great week because 8 weeks ago we put in place this and this and this. So this is the result of the work that I'm doing. And as business owners, as CEO mindset people, we have to be looking in the future of our business and not reacting just to the present of what's happening. And when you start moving forward, thinking like that, you're able to make really good decisions that move the needle in your business and help you become not only more profitable, but also you're not having to be in the day-to-day of the business. This isn't rocket science. This isn't something that I created or made up. This is just what I learned as a practice owner for many, many years after trying so many things that didn't work, and realized that having money and having time, having both is what we all want. And frankly, that's the way to do it as well.
You know, Jamey, that conversation around profit to cash flow, that's like a CEO executive conversation. The conversation about revenue minus expenses to profit is really just a day-to-day operator conversation. We need to shift up into that CEO executive, spend some time at that level looking at that conversation and then letting the day-to-day inform how we get there. And that's what's going to change your life.
So one of the things I told you that we're going to be offering something that I think you enjoy. So Steve and I were talking, we're like, this is such an important topic. So many people struggle in this area, and it can be confusing and all of that. And one of the things that we decided to do, that if you're like, I really want to understand more about my financials, what makes my practice tick. I want to know what that pie chart is for me. I want to get clear not only with where my business is in those terms of clinical costs, administrative costs, profit and overhead costs, but yes, I want to understand kind of what the value of my practice is. And most importantly, what do I do about it? What is the plan to turn this around? Who would be interested in something like that? Yeah. So what Steve and I decided to do is we're going to take up to 7 practice owners, and we're going to work with you individually, in a small group, but small enough that we can work with everyone individually and actually go through this for you, right? You're going to get access to what we just showed you, our new simple financial dashboard tool. We're going to plug your numbers in there. So you have to have access to your numbers, but we're going to help you. And then based on what your numbers say, we're going to help you create a plan for the rest of the year. I mean, a dialed in month over month plan to help you move your business in the right direction. If that is something you are interested in being a part of, we're going to do it for 3 weeks. There might be a bonus week in there. We're not sure, but it's definitely going to be 3 weeks. It's starting July 10th, so after the holiday, and it's going to be once a week for 90 minutes, and it's going to be Steve and I. So it's going to be a financial boot camp intensive, and we're going to just dive in, and we're going to, it's basically going to be a combination of financial boot camp with coaching, with guidance, with planning. Like, you're going to get all of that. The investment in this is $997, and again, we're limiting it to 10 people, or not 10 people, 7 people, because we want to make sure everyone has plenty of attention from Steve and myself. So if that is something you're interested in, you can, there's a link right here that kind of gives a little bit more information, takes you to our page. You can sign up for that. You'll also be getting an email later today that also has information on that. But this is something we're trying out. I've heard so many people that they want to dive in deeper with this, so we figured let's create an offer that that may help some people out. Any questions right now? Wow, that hour flew. It always flies, Steve, when you're talking about such exciting stuff like numbers and KPIs. But does anybody have, we have a few minutes here. Does anybody have any questions for Steve or myself?
What bucket do you find the most difficult to manage? Your clinical labor, your admin labor, or your operating costs? Clinical labor?
Gotta be clinical labor. Let me see.
Yeah, I would say clinical labor. But I also have 3 travelers right now. So and I have 3 new hires. So once they're replaced, that's going to drop my salaries and related expenses down quite a
That'll,
bit.
that'll create a lot of flexibility of what you can do with that. Looking at your comp, looking at your profitability and what you need to do. Clinical labor, I'm not surprised, Jamey. Clinical labor 9 times out of 10 is where the challenge is.
Well, we're a service-oriented business, so that's where you're going to put the money, and rightfully so. You should put the money in clinical labor. That's what produces the revenue. The biggest problem that I've seen over 28 years and doing this 29 years now is utilization. You're paying the staff and they're just not busy
Producing.
enough. That's
It's,
it. Like,
it's,
yes,
revenue
there's
protection.
issues with reimbursements and all that kind of stuff, but every clinic that I've seen, the first thing we do is take them through that model and see, what's going on, and chances are the clinical costs are exorbitant compared to the revenue. So the
Yep.
most obvious place is to look and saying, well, how busy are they? Because if you're paying a bunch of money and they're not busy enough, well, then let's focus on that. And that then takes us to a little bit of a rabbit hole to say, all right, let's figure out why they're not busy. What's the expectations? And then we dive into really changing the culture and really changing what we're about as a company. And if they're the right person, we keep them. If they're not, sometimes we have to allow them to go somewhere else. But the solution typically isn't that complicated when you're clear on what question you're asking. And what we help you do at Practice Freedom U and with this financial boot camp, we're going to help you see your business from a different way so you can ask different questions and get answers that really help you move forward.
Jamey, is that productivity. The other thing that I see, which is a struggle, is when somebody has 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet and,
Oh,
they have, 3 FTEs. They could double, they could triple their FTEs. So it's not just the productivity of the therapist in producing revenue, but think about your operating expense. One of your biggest one is your rent. How much is your physical space able to produce revenue? And are you maximizing it?
Well,
And
that's the other
oftentimes they're not.
thing. That's the other thing we're going to go over in the financial boot camp. I'm telling you, the financial boot camp, we're going to go over all this stuff individually, personally, and all that stuff. But it's like, okay, I got this great, beautiful 5,000 square foot place. I got 3 therapists in it. But you know what? I'm going to open up another place down the street because I want to get a big. No. Get 8 therapists there, make a ton of money, then figure out where you want to go next. Or as I think, Steve, you told me somebody you're working with, or see if you can cut half of that space out and chop half your rent with it.
Yeah, it's the marginal value of your first 1 to 3 therapists is significantly lower
Yes.
than the marginal value of therapists 3, 4, 5, and 6, because you've already paid your major expenses. So you add another therapist and their profit contribution doubles and triples in comparison.
And the reason that is because your clinical overhead is what you're paying, but your operation overhead and a lot of times your admin overhead does not change at all. So all the rest of it is profit. So now you're talking about 65% profit for everybody over that few therapists before you need additional admin to support the therapist. There is a profit zone in there. That's the magic.
The thing that when I talk to people about profit, they're often thinking about, I got to cut my expenses. That's not always the right way to think about it, because you can remember it's expenses relative to revenue. If you can generate more revenue for the expenses that you have, your profitability is going to skyrocket. So in a situation like that, look at how can I generate more revenue without increasing my costs, and all these ratios, all your profitability, all of that changes. And then as you improve that revenue line and your profit margin, you will have more profit for owner's comp, debt payment, savings and investment, and then ultimately cash flow. And that's really the name of the game.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, and that ultimately is the name of the game.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave on this one note, because I know we're at the top of the hour here. But we didn't talk about you as not just a practice owner, but you as a clinician as well, because I know many of us are working in the business, right? We're clinicians at heart, and that's the easiest thing for us to do. If you are working in your business as a clinician, and your business is doing, let's say $600,000-700,000 of revenue, and you have a few other therapists, and that's what you feel is your only way to make money is for you to work a ton of hours, let's say over 30 hours a week, your business is in trouble. It is in trouble because you have to start reducing your hours as a clinician to focus on the stuff that we're talking about to build your company. And if you feel you can't, we have got to dive in to figure out why that's the case. Because it might be that your business model, your treatment model is broken. Meaning, if you're like, I want to do 1 an hour, I want to do quality care, blah, 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 at $85 a visit through insurance. You know what? There's not enough money there for you to make any money to do it, to have a successful business. So sometimes we're making this without even, we recognize this, we're making these emotional decisions that we think make sense, but they don't make sense financially. We have to make sure that this business fits who we are and what we're about and makes sense financially. That's the ideal business. That's how you get practice freedom. But you can't do it by saying, well, no, I want to have great care. And I've heard this so many times. And I'm like, well, 1 an hour is fine. But if you're not making $150 a visit or more, that's not going to work because it's just too expensive to deliver the costs. So again, if you've ever want to really dive into the financials of your business, check out the financial boot camp that Steve and I are offering. We're not offering this again. This is a one-time only. We're testing it out to try to work with a few people and to help them out. So check it out. Happy to, answer any questions. You can just feel free to email me. Happy to answer any questions about it. But we just really wanted to try to serve and help some people that, typically have some difficulties with all of this financial stuff because it is confusing and it can be really overwhelming. So other than that, Steve, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you being here.
Loved it.
Dropping some amazing information. And for everyone else, check us out next time when we do a masterclass series. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week, everybody.